Okay, so welcome to another Wine Night Wednesday, and thank you very much for joining me, Chelsea Everingham, naturopath of Your Health Options. And I'm very excited this evening because I'm interviewing a clinical nutritionist, Luanne Hopkinson. And Luanne runs Olivo Health and Nutrition, which is a clinic based in Melbourne. She also has an online platform in a Facebook group and a Facebook page, both by the name of Happy Without Histamine Intolerance. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining me, Luanne.
Thanks, Chelsea.
It's really great to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to talk to you about histamine intolerance because I know that this is an area of expertise for you and you do a lot with this. As a practicing naturopath myself, I have seen it, histamine intolerance, and I do see people with it, but I don't think I do see as many people as what you do because this is your specialty, and you definitely would know a whole lot more than I do about it. So I'm really glad and I'm very appreciative that you're here to share with everyone a bit about your knowledge.
Cool. Thanks very much. Yeah, I've actually had it myself. So that naturally makes someone who's a nutritionist in my position research it, to death, and then therefore become an expert in it because you have it yourself. So yes, it's definitely one of my passions, making people more aware of what it is and if it could be affecting them, and also helping them resolve it.
Yeah, fantastic. I think as a practitioner, obviously, no one's health is perfect. And as health practitioners, if we have our own health issue to deal with, it makes us even be able to really sympathize with someone on a whole new level, and to get a real good understanding of where those people are at. And it really does come through in your clinical skills, having actually walked that path yourself. So I can't emphasize enough, I should say, the value that your own personal journey with this would give to your patients and anyone that has been diagnosed with histamine intolerance or suspects that they have got. I think they would be best off coming to someone like yourself for those reasons. So there'll be people, though, that haven't heard of histamine intolerance. And I know that myself as a naturopath, before I started studying naturopathy, I had no idea what histamine intolerance was, in terms of, how we know it to be affecting your gut. The only way I'd heard of histamine was in the way that it can cause allergies, because, of course, there are antihistamines out there as medications that people take to downregulate those allergies. So I'm guessing that most other people who might be watching this interview might also relate to that and think, okay, I've heard of antihistamines and I've heard of, histamines in relation to allergies. So what's going on here with all this histamine intolerance? What does this mean? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, it's interesting. So there's some similarities to allergy, which is histamine, but it is definitely not a true allergy. So it's not like a peanut allergy or bee sting allergy that might make someone suddenly get anaphylaxis, need their EpiPen and go to hospital. However, it is similar in that it's the same kind of mechanisms in the body, which is histamine. This is a natural neurotransmitter in our bodies. And when that amount of histamine in our body gets high, we experience symptoms. And there are a lot of different symptoms. It's a very wide range. So one common symptom is migraine. A lot of people who are walking around with migraines actually may have histamine intolerance that's causing those migraines. Mm-hmm. Some of the really common signs and symptoms are hives, the urticaria, which are very common. Itchy, watery eyes, and sinus issues, like you have hay fever, but it's year round, so you always feel like you've got hay fever. Skin rash as well,
Mm-hmm.
And other slightly less sort of known symptoms are even the fatigue. You can get fatigue and brain fog as well.
Yeah.
Insomnia is also a really common symptom because histamine is what we would call an excitatory neurotransmitter. So it wakes us up and makes us want to go, go, go. It actually makes us quite anxious as well. So a lot of those anxiety type symptoms that we feel sometimes can be from histamine. It can be palpitations in particular. That's quite a common one. Often people will find that they've eaten a meal that contains a lot of histamine and they get those palpitations in the evening and then they don't sleep well.
Okay.
So that can kind of be a bit of a link where you can see what might be going on.
Okay. It's really quite interesting, isn't it? And there a lot of symptoms that you've mentioned just now do sound like symptoms that someone might experience in reaction to, environmental triggers, such as allergies, seasonal environmental allergies that would fire up, a histaminic response. So I guess what I'm thinking of in terms of diagnostics, how you would diagnose this, do you have people coming to you sort of saying, well, I've been to my, skin specialist and they've done the RAST, the skin prick test, and nothing came up, but I'm still getting watery and itchy eyes and headaches? And is that a common occurrence for what you see with people coming through? Yeah.
Yeah, you often get people who've been to all the doctors and they've had all the tests. They may actually still have an IgE allergy, which is the immediate allergy to something.
Yeah.
And that's often lingering in the background, but they've already kind of addressed that, they don't have a cat, or, it's not pollen season,
Yeah.
whatever.
They've spent loads of money on those expensive dust mite protective mattress protectors and all that kind of stuff. Yep.
Yeah. And part of what I look at is that whole picture. So if I think that they've got an allergy, a true allergy as well, that can contribute to the body's overall histamine load. So we take that into account. And diagnostically, you can test for blood levels of histamine, but they go up and down and up and down and up and down. So we usually don't expect that they're necessarily going to be consistent and regular. And you can test for another enzyme called the DAO enzyme, which is often low in people when they have histamine intolerance. But that's also not really reliable.
Okay.
So usually the gold standard is we do an elimination diet, 4-week elimination diet, see what happens with the symptoms. And usually if it is histamine intolerance and you're following the diet and you're not going off and having other food, you can see those symptoms change really, really rapidly. So histamine breaks down in the body in 3 days' time. It takes 3 days from a big exposure that's raising your body's level of histamine for that to be broken down. So if you have been eating a high histamine diet and you switch to that low histamine elimination diet, you'll often find within 3 or 4 days, you'll see a symptom, at least one, usually the worst one, will start to improve.
Okay, so if I come to you and I'm suffering terrible headaches, itchy eyes, I'm not quite sure what's going on, maybe I'm not sleeping well, and you think that I have perhaps a histamine intolerance, and you put me on this antihistamine diet, what sort of things do I have to avoid?
So, okay, yeah. So the sort of things we look at is what's in your diet now as well. That gives us a clue, like, are you eating a lot of some of these foods?
Mm-hmm.
So high histamine foods, funnily enough, are really healthy foods. They're foods that are often told that they're great for us, especially fermented foods, which are good for our gut health. So that's one of the big ones. Anything fermented, anything that is made with a yeast, so wine, bread.
No wine. Oh,
Yes. Cheese.
oh no.
Yeah, all those things that are fermented,
So give me a
and
review.
even yogurt as well.
Of course. Yeah.
And a lot of it also depends on how sensitive the person is. So if someone comes to me and they're down to just 5 foods because they're, they've already found that they've eliminated everything, because they're so sensitive to everything, then that would have a slightly different approach to someone who's happily eating absolutely everything, and they have, a few symptoms, but they're not debilitating. So if you've got a lot of symptoms, you'd want to remove more things. The other things are aged meats, so aged bacon, ham, anything like that, because it's cured. So smoked salmon, things like that as well.
So this is actually causing me heart palpitations now, and I don't have a histamine problem, because this is the wine and cheese platter just gone out the window. So what's the good news? Okay, because I know as a naturopath, and you as a clinical nutritionist, we do what we do because we want to help people. And often when we're at this point in the consult where we're explaining to them, okay, you can't have this, you can't have that, and their eyes start widening and you can literally see them stop breathing. What's the good news then? What kind of foods can they still eat? Because of course there are still foods that are really yummy and good for you that you can still have. And can you tell me about those?
Yeah, so you can still have fresh meat.
Yeah.
So as long as it's not sitting around, if you're really sensitive, freeze it straight away. But you can have chicken, lamb, and beef. Sometimes be careful with the aged beef.
Like you
can have all the wonderful fresh vegetables. Pretty much you can have most of them. There's just a couple, eggplant, spinach, tomato, that are really high in histamine. But you can have lashings of gorgeous olive oil. You can have, beautiful risottos, pasta. I prefer gluten-free, but, you can make a nice pesto with lots of herbs. There are a few spices to avoid, but if you're not too sensitive, you can often leave those in because they're in small amounts. So that's dependent on the person as well. But I make a lot of really nice sort of flavoursome meals with a balcony full of herbs that I grow. So you can use a lot of, beautiful fresh basil, parsley, the Vietnamese mint, all those kind of interesting things as well. I love cumin as well. Cumin, coriander seed, you can put those in anything. And of course, lashings of turmeric.
Yes.
Which we love.
We do, don't we? I guess what comes to mind really hearing you talk now about all these fresh foods is really a philosophy that us natural health practitioners and natural medicine practitioners really drive home in general anyway, which is always fresh is best. In terms of nutrition, in terms of nutrient availability, it's in terms of the enzymes in the food as well, being present in their maximum amounts when the food is fresh. So it really drives home that same message, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the best and easiest way to manage these things, if you're not quite sure what's going on, is stick to unprocessed food that you make at home. And then that way, you know exactly what's going in it, and you know that it's fresh and you've made it with, wonderful fresh vegetables and, that sort of thing. So it's one of the things about having food intolerance that I think, they feel like this horrible, terrible thing. And you feel like you're suffering because you can't go out and you can't eat with your friends and all of this. But you gain so many skills learning how to cook, if you're not already a cook, and how to make things that you wouldn't really normally go for, because you've got to think a little bit outside the box.
Yeah.
But it can be a bit of a blessing as well as a curse.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there, because a lot of people these days don't actually have basic cooking skills. So it really is a fabulous way to be able to learn to cook for yourself. And it doesn't have to take a long time. Like one of your favorite dishes being a basil pesto, you can knock that together within a matter of minutes, just using your fresh herbs, your fresh ingredients, and like you were saying, some beautiful fresh olive oil. And it doesn't take long. And the flavor, we don't have to miss out on flavors using fresh food. Herbs can give us so much flavor. We really are selling ourselves short if we're thinking that the answer is in convenience and in packages and in eating out, because we're really dampening down our taste buds a lot of the time by adopting those kind of eating patterns and eating habits. So I think this is a really good refresher for us, a good reminder.
Absolutely. And there is a trap some people do fall into. They hear about low histamine diets, they get a list off the internet of, these are the foods to eat and avoid. Mm-hmm. And then they'll adapt that themselves without any support, and they will end up buying processed packaged foods, generally, full of carbohydrates and empty of nutrients.
Yeah.
And they might be eating a low histamine diet. They might not have as many symptoms, but they're not healing their body with food. So you need those fresh vegetables, meats, and really good oils like olive oil, which actually helps to increase that DAO enzyme that I mentioned earlier. And you need a little bit of support as well, so that you can pull that together and actually work on healing the problem, which is, generally in a lot of people, it's high levels of inflammation and poor gut health. And then also, external triggers that might be adding to the histamine load of the body as well. So that is so important, because so many people do get stuck just eating, biscuits and cereal, and they don't know what else they can eat.
Yeah, really low value nutrient foods that aren't going to do your body any favors at all in the long run. So you really hit on some important points. It's not just in the diet. There is the importance of seeing a qualified health practitioner such as yourself to be able to do that healing, and to be able to use your clinical knowledge in the correct supplements that person needs, to be able to do that healing, because that of course is about how all of our health issues come about in the first place. We have some damage to one or more systems in the body. So that is definitely the underpinning importance. You also mentioned triggers then when you were talking. Do you mind just expanding what you mean about that?
Yeah, so when we talk about histamine, we've got this level of histamine that increases in our body, and when we hit a threshold, that's what causes our symptoms. If we don't really have any triggers that are causing us to create histamine internally, then the external histamine from the food isn't really a problem, because our bucket is really, really empty and we can take in all this food. But if our bucket is full, if we're full of histamine sort of up to here, then we take the food in and we get a reaction. And that bucket can be filled by triggers. And those triggers can be an allergy to pollen or dust mites. Stress is a big one. Mold is another one, mold exposure, and other similar kind of pathogens. So viruses as well. If the body's fighting something or dealing with something like that, it can cause more histamine to be created in the body. Also things like toxins that are in the body, so heavy metals, and a lot of toxins we might be, exposed to farming, and we may be exposed to chemicals, that sort of thing, as well as even household cleaning products. A lot of people get more sensitive to those kind of things as well. Yes. So those are all kinds of triggers. Another really interesting one is exercise. when you exercise, particularly intense exercise, it increases histamine in the body. And another really interesting one is orgasm.
No orgasms for you if you have a histamine intolerance.
Be prepared. So yeah, it's there's a lot of different things. So one of the things we recommend thinking about is stress management and doing more gentle forms of exercise, because that can help lower that histamine load. And looking for any other triggers that may be present. So is there anything else underlying that's actually causing the body to create more internal histamine?
I guess that's a really, really important way that you've just explained that, and you've explained it really well, in that it's almost like a cumulative response from the body. And I think it's really, as clinicians, it's really something that we need to focus on, finding that person's point. For some people it'll be, I just want to be able to enjoy drinking wine again, or for some people it'll be, I want to be able to enjoy orgasms again. So it's about having that key driver.
Both.
Person. Yeah, both together at the same time. So it's about really reducing exposure. As you said, it's easy to actually do a lot of these things. So if we're using toxins in our house, in our household environment, in the way of cleaning products, room sprays, we can reduce our toxin exposure quite dramatically just by being more conscious of where those toxins are and avoiding them. And then that will give room, as you were saying, for our histamine load to be able to be balanced out a little bit more and allow us to maybe make shifts in other areas. And then, of course, doing the healing, which is where you come in, to be able to facilitate that long-term, ongoing maintenance. Yeah, it really is a complex, I find, issue, because we do see, a reactivity capable in many different areas of life. And if we're ticking all these boxes, yes, I've got an IgE or an environmental immediate allergy. Yes, I use room sprays in my house. Yes, I use, commercial laundry with a fabric softener that's got all those horrible toxins in them. Yes, I use personal products that, have all of the toxins in them as well. And I'm getting all those symptoms. If we can just pick a few of those out and reduce that, then, the healing journey's already begun. So it can seem overwhelming, I think, at times for people when they're sort of sitting there with all this information. They start thinking, oh my God, there's so many places I can get exposure. But when we help people to realize, no, you just, you can do this, we can do it in stages, and you just need to slowly reduce and then, as you say, repair. It makes it seem a little bit more manageable, really, doesn't it, when you talk to someone like yourself who really does know a lot about it. So thank you very much. It's been really, really valuable for me, because I actually had no idea about histamine affecting orgasms. So I learned something today. So now I'll be able to add that to my clinical questioning too. So is there anything else that you would like to mention? Of course, I mentioned where if anybody has any questions and they think that they might actually be having problems with histamine intolerance, that they can reach you in person in your Melbourne clinic, which is Olivo Health and Nutrition once again, or they can also reach out to you online in your Facebook page and group, The Happy Without Histamine Intolerance. So is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap things up this evening, Luann?
Yeah, just one of the other things is gut health, and gut health is a big part of it as well. So one of the reasons why we approach diet first is you get to see that symptom improvement quickly.
Yep.
You get to start working on your gut straight away with the diet, and then we can work on other things as well. And then you can start working on all those other triggers as well.
Yeah.
But reducing that intake in the diet usually gives you the quickest results. So that's sort of a good place to start. Yes. So yeah, I think gut health is another really important part of the picture, and that's also something that needs to be addressed. as well as changing your diet.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we don't get that right, and we don't heal the gut properly. And I do see a lot of people, they Google and they say, oh, well, I Googled and I saw that glutamine is good for the gut, so I took that, but they're missing a lot of the picture. There's no one magic pill, and there is no one silver bullet. And we are complex beings, and a lot of the time it takes a carefully put together treatment plan for the person that's right for the individual, not the disease, because the disease can present differently in everyone, as we both well know. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I 100% agree. If we don't get that gut healing right, we will just have issues recurring, and it will just,
Yeah. And the gut health piece is one of the longest pieces, because it takes a really long time to build back up the good bacteria and suppress some of that bad bacteria and get that balance back. But it's a really key part of the puzzle, because you don't want to be stuck on a low histamine diet and every time you try anything new, you have a problem. You need to be working on what's going on under the surface and then work on that reintroduction. I don't like seeing people stuck on narrow diets. Yeah. So it's all about trying to get back as much as you can into, your happy sociable life where you can go outside and you can eat a high histamine meal. Maybe you're not doing that every day, but you can do it, So yeah,
absolutely.
Trying to get that normality back.
That's right. And that's the goal always. And I don't know about you, but I always like to try to reassure people, because I think that these days people can get a little bit despondent and a bit impatient with themselves. And we need to remind them to be gentle on themselves and remind them that, healing is often a slow process, because it's often taken them a long time to get to the state where they're at in the first place. So to go and heal, it can take months, it can take many, many months, and even up to years for people to heal their guts properly. So there's a lot of gentleness and a lot of care that people need to give themselves in allowing that process to happen and to not give up on themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Yep. Thanks once again, Luanne. It's been really wonderful to talk with you tonight. And if anyone wants to reach out to you, has any more questions, I strongly encourage you to, because Luanne's a wealth of knowledge in this area, and as well as being an all-round wonderful woman and amazing human being. So thank you once again. And we'll see you next week for One Night Wednesday. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.